So in video 6 we're going to carry on from before and use mouse clicks to move points. Okay, so as we said in the previous video, we've got an initial point. We then grab the mouse information, if you click it, and it's going to take new values, the new X position wherever the mouse clicked. It's going to try to actually put the point there. Now, does that work? Because instinctively that looks right, okay? But we need to play with this, and if we get this wrong, it's not a problem. And I want to encourage you with the idea that you've got to test ideas out when you code. That makes it a lot better. Let's run. Let's run, he says, the second time, and it's not happy to run. Why are you not running? Bear with me a second. Okay, it was struggling to run because when I copied all that other code out, it kind of messed up stuff. So in theory, it should have drawn my point. I can't see it. Can you see it? If I click the mouse, no, it doesn't seem to be doing anything at all. That's interesting. So what have we done here that's not quite right? There seems to be something wrong with this line here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make that disappear for a second and just check that it would draw my point. Now, when you're not sure about code and it doesn't work, because at this stage it's getting more complex, and you need to learn in this process of how to work your way through problems and issues, right? We don't need this. Let me get rid of this, because we're not using a pause function for the time being. Now, I don't know whether that line messes things up because it was just a guess. Now, I'm deliberately recoding it like this way so you don't have the polished article, but you understand that you should play trial and error with it a little bit more. Let's drag this across. Do you see a point? I don't see a point at all. Doesn't seem to have appeared. And there's an obvious reason. Can you spot what the reason is that it's not appeared? I haven't anywhere asked it to draw it onto that screen. So I have now. Let's run it again. And there it is. So what happens if we have a mouse click, right? After we draw it, a mouse click with a new location, and we shift it to the new location. Should we have a look? There it is. It didn't seem to like it at all as far as I can see. It didn't move it at all. Did you see it move? So it seems to me that the point, this original position, it won't simply just allow you to repeat that. You have to use the move. But here's the thing. If I put this at 100, 100, and I click at 200, 200, I can't simply look. If I, let's spell it out, right? There's the move function. Okay, and have I made another mistake with the coding because it's gone red, interestingly enough? It looks like there's another elementary error in here somewhere. Bear with me a second. So we've got the thing, we've got move, and what do you remember about move? Actually, when we move, we don't use the equal sign, do we? Right? So in this demonstration, I'm trying to show you some of the very classic errors that people make. So I've got to move, but here, notice here, these values are the ones of the location I input. I click the mouse on rather, watch this. There it is. Now if I click here, is it going to move it here, or is it going to move it somewhere slightly different? Look at that, it shifted it down to here. Did you see what it might have done? Let's run it again. Right, if I click, there it is there. If I click my mouse, just say a fraction to the left, how come it shifted it all the way down here? Can you spot what it's doing? It's taking the new mouse positions and adding them to the original starting point. So actually, if you want to move it to the same place, you've got to, I'll pause. Can you work it out? You've got to subtract your original starting place. Right? Notice there's 100, it starts there. You've got to take that off. And that's 100, you've got to take that off. Right? So watch this. Does it work now? There it is. Click. Oh, spot on. Did you notice that? So I'm not going to go much further into this video because what I'm trying to get you to understand is that coordinate geometry has some key ideas. Before we look at circles, lines and triangles and other objects, all of the videos so far have been concentrating on drawing a point, moving it, and shifting it to help you get a feeling for coordinate geometry. Absolutely critical. Now look at the stuff we have on screen. I would copy it, I would play with it. This is typically what people do when they code to save them writing things. If I create an initial x value and I put it at 100, and I create an initial y value and I put it at 200, I can then use those values everywhere in my code, and I don't have to then keep on retyping those numbers. The advantage of doing that is, look, it makes the code a little bit clearer. I'm not sure if it will to you because you're relatively new, but have a look at how it does. So the point has some initial values, in it y, in it x. When I move it, it takes the new position, which I've just picked up from here. So we could say the mouse click location, right, which is actually what we're dealing with, and it subtracts the initial position and works it. Now, why do that? Because I can have a second point, and I don't need to write 100 and 200 everywhere, right? And my second point, I can move my second point in a slightly different way if I want. I can, instead of, but for the time being, I'll just copy it. It seems a bit odd that I would do that actually, but let's just make the second point move dx and dy. Let's give it a slightly different based on your click, right? But I've got 2 points there. Drag that over here, click. There's one, I think the other's flown off the screen. Anyway, we're getting a little bit complicated, unnecessarily complicated, so I'm going to undo that change and stop here and encourage you to understand that really this drawing, moving behavior is really quite critical. Everything else really does come down to how do you draw a shape? What is a shape? Luckily for you, you'll be pleased to know that Python knows what lines are, circles are, and it gives you all these useful little tools to manipulate them, and that's all you have to think about them. Same kind of concept when you come to moving them, that you always, if you have an initial place, you have to subtract it from wherever you are if you're going to use a mouse click to get to it. We've got triangles. Now you're going to look at different shapes and we're going to start moving them around. You're also, just to summarize, you are going to look at affecting the original windows, setting something called coordinate systems, and so on and so forth. And then what I would recommend you do is then go and play with it, graphical programming exercises. But hopefully by the end of this series of videos, you've got a more confident grasp of what's going on.